Welcome to another episode of Canuary. And today I'm making, or I should say canning, a dish that symbolizes the heritage from my father's side. You know, last time I did my mother's, so it was a German dish. This time it's an Irish dish because my father's parents immigrated directly here from Ireland. So this is a side dish, and yes, it does have potatoes in it. Let me show you the recipe here. It is Kale Colcannon, and it is from the Better Homes and Garden Complete Canning Guide. Now, this recipe has kale in it, of course, potatoes, and they want yellow potatoes, so I used Yukon Gold, a little bit of ham, and chicken broth, and it's supposed to be leeks, but I didn't have any, so I used onions. So easy, not a lot of ingredients, but this is a great side dish, and you might want to think about having it on St. Patty's Day. Now, I'm going to show you just how good it is with corned beef. Look at this. Oops, but that's at the end. I'll show you after you can it how to open a can and how to actually make the dish. So stay tuned. You want 3.5 pounds of potatoes, and they're diced up into 1.5 inch pieces approximately. Now, I actually weighed my potatoes to make sure I had 3.5 pounds because it doesn't tell you how many cups of diced potatoes you need. And then you're going to need 8 ounces of curly kale. Well, I grow kale every year in my garden, but you know, January, I'm sorry, my kale is done. So I had to buy some in the store. And so one bunch like this equaled a little more than 4 ounces. And let me show you how you need to actually prepare the kale. Now, the first thing you're going to want to do is look at that beautiful curl, huh? And the kale is really wash it well. After you get done washing it well, shake it out. Then, can you see on the back here, it's got a heavy stalk. It's called the rib. That can be, well, a bit chewy. So it's not what you want in this dish. So what you're going to do is grasp and like this. Okay, now you have your individual kale, and you're just going to tear it into pieces. Really easy. And you're going to want 4 ounces of diced very small smoked ham. And it says 3 cups of leeks cut very thinly. Well, I went to the store, they were all out of leeks, and leeks this time of the year is pretty expensive. And it said 4 large leeks, use only the white part, will make about 3 cups. Well, in my experience, that isn't true. It takes a lot more than 4. Anyway, I'm just cheating. I am using 3 cups of thinly sliced onions. And then our last ingredient is chicken broth. And we need 6 cups. I've put in a little extra than 6 cups just in case I need a little more. I hate to run out when I'm canning. And then, of course, we need pint jars, canning lids, and rings. And that's all there is to this recipe. So let's get started. Now, one of these come in handy. It's something I used to have when I belonged to Weight Watchers probably 25 years ago. But it is a scale where you can weigh your food. This really came in handy, so I knew that I would have at least 3.5 pounds of potatoes, and the same with the 4 ounces of kale. So if you want to be precise, get a kitchen scale. Now, this recipe does take a little prep time to get your kale all de-ribbed and all the pieces out, and get your potatoes nice and peeled and cut up, and the same with your onions. So allow probably about 45 minutes prep time for this recipe. Now I've put my diced potatoes in a pot, just covered them with water, and now I'm going to put them on the burner, get it up to a boil, cover it, and then stay on sim for 1 minute. While my potatoes are coming up to a boil, I've put in the required amount of water for my pressure canner, and because I have hard water, I have added some white vinegar so I don't get those cloudy jars. Which I admit, sometimes I forget and I do have cloudy jars. And it doesn't hurt anything, they just don't look as pretty. So our pot of potatoes has a nice boil and is taking a lot of the starch out, so we're going to want to cover it and put it down to sim for 1 minute. Okay, Google, stop timer. Well, our 1 minute is up, we'll take off the lid. Now we want to add our other ingredients. So let's put in this kale, which will shrink to probably about nothing. Mixing it up. Okay. Now let's put in our onions. Again, we want to mix it up. And of course, it probably would have been a good idea if I used a little bit bigger pot, but I like this pot has a drainage holes on it, so it makes it easy to drain. I don't have to use a colander. Okay, and then let's put in our ham. I'll be back when I've got it mixed well. Now we're just going to drain this. And of course you can use a colander. I just love this. I guess it's more like a spaghetti pot. It makes things a lot easier. Now we want to heat our broth. We want to bring it up to boiling and then just keep it warm. This can be done while you're filling your jars. So we're going to fill up our jars with our potato and kale and ham and onion mixture. You want to leave an inch headspace. More. And I'll be back when I have all the jars filled. So our broth is nice and hot, and now we're going to fill these jars. And yes, I should be using the funnel, but I'm not. Just have to wipe the rims well, right? Okay, we want to leave 1 inch headspace. And this one needs to be So I'll be back when I have this all nice and filled. And then we'll go on to our next step. Jars kind of look pretty, don't they? Now it's time for our debubbling. Like I said, just don't use a metal knife, but plastic knife works well. One of these actual debubbling tools. You just want to go all around and just make sure there's no air pockets, right? And I have to admit, I would do 7 cups of broth to be safe, but it might have been exactly the 6.5 because I actually did 8 cups. I can always reuse the other broth. Okay, now, in some cases, debubbling it has caused the liquid to come a little lower, so I'm going to pour a little bit more here. bit more here. A bit more here. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Now you're going to want to wipe the rims. You can use a little vinegar on your cloth, or you can use just water. This isn't a real fat kind of recipe, like you're not doing pork or something, so probably using vinegar isn't really needed. Just wipe that rim well so you get a good seal. Okay. Now we're going to put our lids on. Stop peeking out. Get back in there. Get in there. Sometimes you just got to tell them who's boss. There we go. One, two, three, four, five. And I'll never take lids for granted again after the great lid shortage this fall. So always make sure you got plenty on hand. Now we're going to want to finger tighten our jars. And I'll be back when this is done. Don't they look lovely with that little bit of kale green coming through? Well, now it's time to pressure can them. So always make sure you have a tray like this to go into your canner. It doesn't have to be like this one exactly. It can even be a cloth or a shelf made out of canning rings. Just something so your jars, those glass jars, don't sit right on that very hot bottom and explode. So I've had the water heating up my pressure canner because that makes the time that it comes to pressure quicker. Put in all of these. And luckily my canner has just enough room on the bottom for 8 of these pints. But I can always do another level in this canner. And people ask me, this is American Pressure Canner 921. There they are, all nice in the canner. And now we're going to put on our lid. Now, while that's happening, it's not a bad idea to check your vent hole. I use a paper clip, and you're just going to want to put it right in the hole. Can you see it coming out? There it is. So my vent hole isn't blocked. Very, very important to check that every time you pressure can. And of course, make sure you have well lubricated rim if you have a pressure canner like mine. Very, very important. Now I'm just going to put the top on and screw it tight. Okay, we've had a continuous steam coming out of here for 10 minutes. And now I'm going to put on my weight for 10 pounds. Now we're just going to wait until this gets up to the 10 on the gauge. Okay, you hear the jiggling and the gauge is on 10. So now we're going to wait 65 minutes. Yes, I did say can the pints for 65 minutes. That is what the recipe says. Again, if you don't feel safe doing that because it does have a little bit of ham in it, you can do it at 75 minutes for the pints. An extra 10 minutes will not damage anything. Okay, our time is up. I'm going to turn the burner off and we're going to wait until this dial It's down to 0. Well, we're down to 0. So we can now take our top off here. Take off our weight. Oh, still hear that last bit of air coming out. Now I'm just going to wait 5 minutes and then pull out my jars. Here they are. Aren't they beautiful? Okay, now let's actually open a jar and make the dish. Well, we start by opening our can. Hear that? There's our contents. Now we're going to put them into the pan. Came out easy, huh? Okay. Here's our pan. Now we're going to put it on the burner and we're going to get it up to boiling and then boil it covered for 10 minutes. Well, you can see it's boiling away. We have to wait until the 10 minutes is up. So we want to drain what's in here, but to be honest, hardly anything came out. I think it's been absorbed. So let's put it back in here, really. Okay, so let's mash it up. There we go. Now we're going to add 2 tablespoons of milk, cream, or in this case, I'm using half and half. And you could warm it up first, but this is hot enough that it's not going to matter. Okay, so now let's mush that in. Oh, now we're getting it nice and creamy. Okay, let's dish it up. There it is. Looking absolutely delicious, right next to some corned beef. There we have it. Doesn't that look good? Corned beef and the Colcannon. Let's take a little taste. Really nice and creamy. There's got a little piece of ham there. Take a little piece of corned beef here with it. Irish Heaven. So I hope you decide to can Kale Colcannon. I think it makes a delightful dish with corned beef, but with a beef roast, anything else. It's a nice change from your regular mashed potatoes. As always, thank you for watching. Please subscribe, share the knowledge, and watch all the other Canuary videos. Thank you.